Today, we are going to explore the shocking and disturbing story of America's first known serial killer, H. Holmes. This story matters because it shows how a highly intelligent and charming man used deception, manipulation, and pure, cold-blooded evil to commit some of the darkest crimes in American history. If you enjoy long, detailed true crime storytelling, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss episodes like this.
Herman Webster Mudgett, who later changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes and became known simply as H. Holmes, was born in 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. He was born into a strict household. His parents were strong believers in discipline, and punishment was common. Holmes was quiet, introverted, and extremely intelligent from a very young age. He read advanced books, studied science, and learned things much faster than other children. But behind this intelligence, there were early signs of something darker. As a child, Holmes was known to lie easily and often. He bullied smaller children. Some stories suggest he harmed animals for fun, something that is commonly seen in people who later develop violent criminal tendencies. Holmes did not have many friends. People described him as strange, distant, and unemotional. But to adults, he appeared polite, respectful, and well-behaved, which made it easy for him later in life to hide his true nature. Holmes said he hated human suffering, but many people believed this was a lie. Even as a teenager, he was fascinated by death. He was obsessed with how the human body worked, especially muscle and bone structure. He spent time reading medical books and studying anatomy. This interest in the human body would later become central to its crimes. By the age of 16, Holmes had already learned how to manipulate people. He could charm adults with perfect manners, speak confidently, and convince people to trust him quickly. Behind this polite smile, he was already stealing small items, cheating in school, and lying about almost everything. At 18 years old, Holmes married his first wife, Clara Lovering. Even though they were very young, Holmes pretended he was deeply in love, but people close to them saw cracks immediately. Holmes was controlling, verbally abusive, and sometimes violent. Clara later said that she was afraid of him. Eventually, she left him, but Holmes never divorced her. This became a pattern. Throughout his life, Holmes would marry multiple women under different names without ever ending the previous marriages. Holmes eventually enrolled in medical school at the University of Michigan. This is where the dark side of his intelligence became even clearer. He discovered that medical students had access to human cadavers for study. Holmes realized he could use these bodies to make money. He began stealing cadavers, damaging them, and then staging fake accidents to collect insurance money. This gave him a dangerous confidence. He realized that if he used charm and intelligence properly, he could commit crimes without consequences. Holmes became an expert at forgery, fraud, and lying. He used big words, acted polite, and dressed like a gentleman. People respected him easily. He had a clean face, a confident voice, and a calm manner. He used these traits like weapons. Inside his mind, everything was a game of control. After graduating from medical school, Holmes began moving from town to town, New York, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and others. In each place, there were strange events: missing children, suspicious deaths, burned buildings, unpaid debts. Holmes would leave just before people became suspicious. He never stayed long enough to face consequences. He changed his name often and lived like a ghost, drifting from one place to the next. In 1886, Holmes arrived in Chicago. This was the moment everything changed. Chicago was a fast-growing city filled with opportunities and thousands of new faces. Holmes knew this was the perfect place to disappear into a crowd. He took a job at a drugstore owned by an elderly woman named Dr. Holton and her sick husband. After the husband died, Holmes offered to help the widow. Over time, he convinced her to let him run the store entirely. Not long afterward, the widow Holton mysteriously disappeared. People asked Holmes where she had gone. Holmes told everyone calmly that she had moved to California for a better life. No one ever saw her again. Across the street from the drugstore, Holmes bought an empty lot. At first, people thought he was just building a small hotel, But soon the building grew larger and stranger. It had 3 floors, dozens of small rooms, secret hallways, odd angles, staircases leading to nowhere, doors that locked only from the outside, soundproof chambers, and gas pipes hidden inside the walls. Holmes constantly hired and fired construction workers so no one could understand the full layout of the building. Later, investigators would call it the Murder Castle. Holmes claimed it would be a hotel for visitors coming to the 1893 World's Fair, but deep inside, he had darker plans. This building was designed for control, manipulation, and murder. From the outside, the building looked normal. It had shops on the ground floor, rooms above, and a sign that suggested it was a small hotel. But inside, Holmes had created a maze of hidden traps, sealed doors, and rooms with no escape. Some rooms were airtight and connected to gas lines he could control from his office. Other rooms had hidden chutes leading directly to the basement. There were peepholes behind walls, secret passages, and sliding panels that allowed Holmes to watch victims without being seen. It was a structure built from the mind of a man who wanted complete power over life and death. Holmes made sure no single worker ever understood the full design. If anyone questioned his strange requests, he fired them immediately. Bills went unpaid, workers complained, and creditors came looking for money. But Holmes always used lies, excuses, and new identities to stay out of trouble. What nobody realized was that he was preparing his private playground, a place where people could enter but never leave. Holmes targeted young women who came to Chicago looking for work, freedom, or opportunity. Many had no family in the city. They were perfect victims. Holmes placed newspaper ads offering high-paying jobs for young, attractive women. He interviewed them personally, charming them with his confidence and wealth. He made them feel safe. Some women fell in love with him. Others simply trusted him because he acted like a gentleman. When women accepted jobs, he made them sign life insurance policies, with Holmes himself as the beneficiary. He explained it was just a requirement for the job. His charm was so strong that most women didn't question it. Some moved into his building. Others visited often for work or romance. Many of these women disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Holmes began dating and even secretly marrying multiple women. One of them was a young, kind woman named Minnie Williams. She inherited valuable property, and Holmes convinced her to give him control of it. Minnie moved into the Murder Castle. Soon after, her sister Nanny came to visit. Both sisters disappeared. Holmes told different people different stories. Minnie had moved to Europe, or she got married, or she left the city. No one ever saw either sister again. In 1893, the World's Fair opened in Chicago. Millions of visitors came from across the world. Holmes saw this as the perfect opportunity. Tourists came to his building looking for rooms. Some stayed only one night. Others stayed longer. Some checked out, but many didn't. Travelers often vanished in Chicago during the World's Fair. It was easy to blame the chaos of the city. No one suspected a charming hotel owner with a perfect smile. Holmes continued committing insurance fraud as well. He bought items on credit and never paid for them. He stole horses, sold them in other cities, and changed his identity constantly. His lies grew larger, and eventually he met a man named Benjamin Pitezel, who would become his business partner and later one of his victims. Pitezel was a carpenter and a heavy drinker who admired Holmes. He believed Holmes was a genius. Holmes took advantage of him, using him for schemes and illegal plans. Eventually, Holmes came up with a big insurance scam. According to the plan, they would fake Pitezel's death and collect a large insurance payout. A fake body would be burned to make it look like Pitezel had died in an explosion. The money would be split between Holmes, Pitezel, and Pitezel's wife. But Holmes had a different idea. Instead of using a fake body, Holmes decided to kill Pitezel for real. In 1894, Holmes murdered him using chloroform and staged the body to look like an accident. He then collected the insurance money. What makes the story even darker is what happened next. Holmes promised Pitezel's wife that he would take care of her children. He convinced her to give him custody of 3 of them, Alice, Nellie, and Howard.
She believed Holmes was helping her family. Instead, Holmes began traveling with the children across multiple states, constantly lying about where their father was and what was happening. Holmes stayed ahead of investigators by moving quickly and changing names. He separated the children from each other, telling them it was only temporary, but one by one, the children disappeared. Holmes murdered all three during the journey. Their mother had no idea what had happened. She believed Holmes was protecting them. By this time, detectives, insurance investigators, and angry creditors were all looking for Holmes. His lies were catching up to him. A sharp and determined detective named Frank Geyer began following Holmes' trail. He searched hotel guest books, train stations, abandoned houses, and old rental properties. Slowly, Geyer uncovered the horrifying truth. Holmes was finally arrested in Boston in November 1894, not for murder, but for an outstanding warrant related to one of his many frauds. At first, Holmes pretended he was innocent. He smiled, acted calm, and spoke politely. But when police began discovering evidence, Holmes' stories kept changing. He loved talking and used interviews to confuse the truth. Meanwhile, investigators searched Holmes' building in Chicago. When they entered the murder castle, they were horrified. They found hidden rooms, torture chambers, gas pipes, surgical tables, acid vats, and piles of human bones. Some rooms were built specifically to trap victims. Others were used to store bodies. The basement was worse, filled with tools, ashes, bones, and discarded remains. People across America were shocked. Newspapers called the building a house of horrors and a murder factory. Holmes became known nationwide as a monster wearing the mask of a gentleman. Holmes eventually confessed to 27 murders, though many of these were inconsistent and possibly exaggerated. He seemed to enjoy playing with the truth. Only 9 murders were officially confirmed. Some experts believe the real number could have been over 200, but no one knows for sure. Holmes himself once said, "I was born with the devil in me."
Holmes' trial began in 1895, and it became one of the most talked about events of the decade. Crowds filled the courtroom every day just to see him. Journalists traveled from across the country to report on each moment. Holmes sat calmly in his seat, wearing a neat suit, speaking politely, and acting as if everything was normal. People were shocked by how emotionless he was. He didn't look like a killer. He didn't act like a killer. He behaved like a well-educated gentleman having a conversation. But beneath that calm surface was a man who had spent years studying people, learning how to manipulate them and hiding behind lies. Holmes represented himself as his own lawyer for part of the trial. He argued intelligently, cross-examined witnesses, and tried to confuse the facts. His confidence was frightening. Some people wondered if he actually believed he could escape justice. He could not. The evidence against him for the murder of Benjamin Pitezel was overwhelming. Witnesses testified, investigators described the trail of lies, and the children's bodies were found. The jury did not take long to reach a verdict. Holmes was sentenced to death by hanging. But even after being convicted, Holmes continued playing games. He gave multiple interviews to newspapers, and in each interview he told a different story. Sometimes he claimed he was innocent. Other times he confessed to murders he could not have committed. In one interview, he said he killed 27 people. In another, he claimed he killed 100. In another, he said he only killed Pitezel. Reporters realized Holmes enjoyed the attention. He liked confusing the world. Holmes once said, "I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing." This sentence showed exactly how he thought, as if killing was part of his nature, something he was proud of. On May 7, 1896, Holmes was executed at Moyamensing Prison in Philadelphia. Hundreds of people gathered outside the prison that morning. They wanted to see the end of one of the most chilling criminals America had ever known. Holmes walked the gallows calmly. He was not shaking, he was not crying. He simply stood there with the same quiet confidence he had always carried. When the trapdoor opened, Holmes fell, but his neck did not break. Instead, he died slowly, taking more than 15 minutes to lose consciousness. Even in death, Holmes remained disturbing. Holmes made a strange request before he died. He asked to be buried 10 feet deep in the ground, in a coffin filled with cement. He said he did not want grave robbers to steal his body. Many people believed he was terrified that someone would dig up his remains, study them, or expose something he was hiding. Others believed he wanted to create a mystery, to make people wonder whether he really died or whether he escaped the prison and continued killing somewhere else under a new identity. After Holmes's death, the murder castle in Chicago continued to attract attention. Crowds gathered outside to see the building. Newspaper writers described it in terrifying detail. It became a symbol of hidden evil, a reminder that someone who looks polite, well-dressed, and successful can still be a monster inside. In 1895, a fire destroyed much of the building. Some believe it was arson. Others think people wanted to erase the dark memories. Later, the land was rebuilt, and today a post office stands on the same spot. But some say that if you walk into the basement of that post office, the original foundation from Holmes's murder castle still exists. For decades after Holmes's execution, rumors continued to spread. Some believed he faked his death. Others believed he escaped the prison with the help of guards he bribed. The coffin filled with cement only made the rumors stronger. Many books and articles claimed Holmes survived and moved to South America. Some people reported seeing a man who looked just like him years after 1896. For more than 100 years, people wondered whether Holmes had tricked everyone one last time. Then, in 2017, the mystery was finally solved. Holmes's descendants requested that his body be exhumed to confirm whether he was actually buried in Philadelphia. When the cement coffin was opened, investigators found a well-preserved body. Holmes's clothes, hair, and even his iconic mustache were still visible. It was him. Dental records confirmed his identity. The rumors ended. Holmes had truly died in 1896. Even after more than 120 years, Holmes remains one of the most terrifying figures in American crime history. His intelligence, charm, and ability to manipulate people made him almost impossible to detect. His building, the so-called murder castle, was a physical representation of his mind. Confusing, twisted, filled with traps, and built for one purpose: control. Holmes teaches us a frightening lesson about human nature. Evil does not always look wild, loud, or violent. Sometimes it wears a suit. Sometimes it smiles politely. Sometimes it shakes your hand, looks you in the eyes, and speaks with perfect manners. Holmes showed the world that danger can hide behind charm, that a friendly face can mask a dark and calculating mind. He lived his life without empathy, without guilt, and without fear. To him, people were objects, tools to be used, controlled, and discarded. His crimes were not acts of passion. They were acts of cold planning. He studied his victims, studied their weaknesses, and used every part of his intelligence to destroy them. Holmes's story is not just a true crime tale. It is a warning.
Even after Holmes's death, investigators and historians kept uncovering more details about his crimes, but the truth became difficult to separate from the legends. Holmes had lied so many times during his life that even official documents were filled with contradictions. Witnesses remembered different things, some exaggerated, some misunderstood, and some had been tricked by Holmes so completely that their memories were unreliable. Holmes left behind a trail of confusion, almost as if he wanted the world to keep guessing forever. Many people asked the same question: why did Holmes kill? What drove him? What was happening inside his mind? The answer wasn't simple. Holmes was not like most killers driven by rage or emotion. He didn't kill for revenge. He didn't kill because of sudden anger. There was no single motive that explained everything. Instead, Holmes treated murder like a science, something to study, something to perfect. He seemed to enjoy the planning, the manipulation, the control, and the power. Every step, from choosing a victim to deciding a trap, was thought out in advance. He didn't kill because he lost control. He killed to feel in control. Psychologists today believe Holmes may have been a mixture of several dangerous personalities: a narcissist, a sociopath, and a pathological liar. He felt no guilt, no empathy, no emotional connection. People were simply pieces on a board that he moved for his own benefit. If someone could give him money, love, obedience, or advantage, he charmed them. If they became useless, he got rid of them. Holmes's intelligence made him even frightening. Most criminals leave obvious clues or behave recklessly. Holmes was careful, methodical, and patient. His crimes were not random, they were experiments, and the murder castle was his laboratory. Inside that building, Holmes created a world where he controlled every door, every hallway, every moment. He could hear footsteps through hidden vents. He could watch victims through secret holes. He could decide who lived and who died with a turn of a gas valve. To him, the castle was not a hotel. It was a physical expression of his dark imagination. Imagine walking into a room and hearing the door lock behind you. Imagine realizing the room was airtight. Imagine gas slowly filling the space while someone watched silently from behind a wall. For Holmes, these moments were not horrific. They were thrilling. They made him feel powerful. What makes Holmes even more terrifying is how ordinary he looked. He didn't fit the image of a monster. He had a well-groomed mustache, good posture, and polite manners. He spoke clearly. He dressed professionally. He used a soft tone of voice. People trusted him instantly, especially women. He understood human psychology so well that he could say exactly what someone wanted to hear. Holmes used this skill everywhere he went. When he needed money, he charmed bankers. When he needed property, he charmed business owners. When he needed victims, he charmed innocent women. Smile, speak gently, offer safety, gain their trust, then strike. In many ways, Holmes represented a new kind of criminal, one shaped by the big cities, the rapid growth of America, and the anonymity of modern life. Chicago in the late 1800s was crowded, chaotic, and filled with opportunity. People rushed in out of the city every day. New faces arrived constantly. Holmes understood that in such a place, people could vanish easily. Families might never hear from them again. No one would know where to begin looking. This environment allowed Holmes to flourish. His victims weren't only killed, they were erased. Another disturbing aspect of Holmes' life was how he used marriage as a tool. He married women simply to access their money, property, or trust. He pretended to be loving, supportive, and responsible. But behind closed doors, he controlled them, manipulated them, and isolated them from their families. Many of these women vanished without leaving a single clue. Their names appeared in hotel registers, letters, and job applications, and then disappeared forever. Holmes also used children in his schemes. This part of his story is the hardest to accept. His involvement with the Peitzel family was especially cruel. He manipulated a grieving mother, stole her children, and treated them like pieces in his mental game. While traveling with the children, Holmes appeared calm and friendly to strangers. He checked into hotels under different names, bought toys for the girls, and acted like a caring guardian. Meanwhile, he was planning their deaths. Detective Frank Geyer's investigation later revealed the heartbreaking truth. He followed Holmes's trail across several cities, checking records, speaking to hotel clerks, and searching abandoned homes. Geyer discovered the remains of Alice and Nellie hidden in the attic of a house in Toronto. Their bodies were carefully placed, as if Holmes wanted to hide them with precision. Howard, the youngest child, was found buried in a shallow pit behind a rental property in Indianapolis. These discoveries shook America. Newspapers published emotional stories. People who once admired Holmes's intelligence now called him a beast, a fiend, and the devil in human form. The murder of the Peitzel children removed any doubt about what Holmes truly was. Even after the trial, after the execution, after the body was confirmed, Holmes continued to fascinate the world. Books, movies, documentaries, and television series still explore his life. Scholars debate how many victims he truly had. Tourists visit the site of the murder castle, and writers analyze his psychology. Holmes became more than a criminal. He became a symbol of deception, a symbol of hidden evil, a reminder that monsters can wear human skin. Today, people often ask, what made Holmes different from other killers? The answer is simple: ambition. Holmes didn't want to commit one murder. He wanted a system, a method, a structure. He wanted to create an environment where murder was almost automated, where the building itself helped him kill. His castle was not a random creation. It was designed with purpose, detail, and intent. He wanted to become efficient. He wanted to scale his crimes. He wanted to turn murder into a routine. That level of planning is what makes him one of the most dangerous criminals in American history. Holmes's life also teaches another important lesson. Intelligence does not equal goodness. Many people trusted Holmes because he was smart, articulate, and successful. They believed intelligence was a sign of character. Holmes proved that intelligence can be used for evil. It can be twisted into manipulation, cruelty, and destruction. Holmes used his mind like a weapon, and he left behind a legacy of fear that still haunts people today.